Psalm 49. Hear this, all ye people, give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the day of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? They shall trust in their wealth, and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches. None of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. That he should still live forever, and not see corruption? For he seeth that wise men die likewise, the fool and the brutish person perish, and leave their wealth to others. Their inward thought is that their house shall continue forever, and their dwelling place to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being honored abideth not. He is like the beast that perisheth. This their way is their folly, yet their prosperity approveth their saying, Selah. Like sheep they are laid in the grave, death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me, Selah. But not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away, his glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee, when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers, they shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beast that perisheth. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all together tonight to hear the preaching of your word. I pray that you would fill our preacher with your spirit, Lord, and we'd be able to learn something new from your word tonight. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Psalm 49. This is the last in this order of verses in the book 2 of Psalms, starting at chapter 42. Is the start of the second book of Psalms, and then it starts out with the Psalms dedicated to the sons of Korah, and this whole set is meant to, while it's sung in the temple and the tabernacle, is meant to bring people from focusing in self to focusing on God, to realizing God's promises of the future, the redemption that he has, and the future kingdom that he has for Israel and so forth, and them as a people of God, and to not focus in yourself on what you lack, but focus on God and what he has given and what he has promised. And though you have confusion and you're not sure what's happening in this world, that you can trust in him because of what you've heard in the past. You can see some of it, what has happened in your time, but then you can see the promises of the future and so forth. And so these Psalms are focused on bringing you to realizing that your trust must be in God. It cannot be in anything else. It cannot be in yourself. It cannot be focused on the wicked and all that they do to you. For example, he says, For thou art the God of my strength, in Psalm 43. Why dost thou cast me off? Why do I go mourning? Because of the oppression of the enemy, that feeling that a lot of times people have, that they are oppressed by the enemies of God, that they're trusting in the Lord, but they're being oppressed and so forth. They can't really, they trust in the Lord, but it feels like the enemies have victory over them time after time after time. and that they cannot just have victory in this victory against the wicked and so forth. It seems like the wicked are persevering against them, and yet we see in these chapters that while it looks like the wicked are persevering in this world today, the future is not very bright for the wicked. The future is very dim for the wicked, and it is very bright for the righteous, the upright in God. And then, of course, Psalm 47, clap your hands. That's Psalm 46 was how God is our refuge. We should trust in the refuge of God, and so forth. And then 47, 46 is that reunion, that marriage with God in heaven. Actually, Psalm 45 is the marriage of God with us in heaven, and then 46 is God coming to earth to save us, and then chapter 47 is clapping our hands, rejoicing that God's government is now placed on the earth, and then Psalm 48, of course, is to after they understand that they're going to be married to God in the future, we're betrothed to God as a people of God, and then that in heaven we'll be married to Him, and then God, after the marriage, is going to come down to earth and set up His kingdom. Verse 6 of Psalm 46 says, "The heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered His voice, the earth melted." And that's Him. The Lord of the hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations He hath made in the earth. That's Him coming to the earth. And then 47, the establishment of His kingdom. 48 is Israel, or more specifically, remember, these are psalms being done in the tabernacle in Jerusalem and so forth, and they're meant to be in the tabernacle and so forth, the people of God, the center area of the children of Israel that are worshiping the Lord. And so in Psalm 48, he's pointing out that you presently will be one day the center hub of God's government. You will be the center hub of where God is going to rule and reign in authority and righteousness on the earth. And so it's almost like pointing out, like when you get a bare piece of land and you're going to build a building, and you're going to say, hey, this is where the kitchen is going to be, this is where the bedrooms are going to be, this is where the living room is going to be. You're measuring it out. Psalm 48, verse 13, "Mark ye well her bulwarks, consider her palaces, that ye may tell in the generation following. For this God is our God, even forever and ever." And so he's talking about, hey, even though this city, Jerusalem, the physical city you see here, is not as perfect as what it will be when God comes, you need to consider that one day over here, this is where His palaces are going to be. One day over here, this is where His government's going to be. One day over here, this is where everything is going to be established. And so he's trying to get people to focus on the fact that even though the wicked appear to be powerful now, and that they seem to persevere and sometimes take over in certain areas and God's people seem to be weaker than them, he's saying, hey, one day your city, this small city that has been attacked and has a bunch of enemies, one day is going to be the crown jewel of God's government and God's rule on the earth. And so you need to have this mindset. Even though you are weak now, you need to have the mindset that one day you will be in God's kingdom, the most powerful city in the world. And so you need to act like it. You need to, even though it's not presently happening, you need to act in faith like it is there. So the last chapter, Psalm 48, verse 14, it says, "For this God is our God." The God he just finished explaining, the one that is going to come and marriage us. "Our heart is inditing in a good matter. Thou art fairer than the children of men. The grace is poured upon thy lips." The God that he explains here, "Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Thy scepter is a kingdom, is a right scepter. Thou lovest righteousness and hateth wickedness. Therefore God, thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows." Realizing that this is going to be God in a human being, a fellow in a human being is going to rule on the earth. So God in the form of a man is going to rule on the earth, according to that passage. And then we will be His bride. "The king's daughters were among the honorable women. Upon the right hand did stand the queen, the gold of Ophir. Hearken, O daughter, and consider, and incline thine ear. Forget also thine own people and thy father's house." Forget about the humanity that you were part of. You're going to be married to the King of Kings, the Lord of glory. And so the king greatly desired thy beauty, for he is thy Lord, and worship thou him. Don't focus on where you came from as a weak human being, as somebody who is who used to be a sinner and wicked and so forth, but focus on the person that you're going to be married to. Focus on your king, the Lord of glory. And so, verse 14, she shall be brought unto the king in raiment of needlework. The virgins of her companions that follow her shall be brought unto thee. Remember what Paul the Apostle says, that he desired to give them as a chaste virgin unto Jesus Christ when he came, when the marriage occurred. And with gladness and rejoicing shall they be brought, and shall enter into the king's palace. And so we're going to go into heaven to the marriage supper, not the marriage supper, but the marriage in heaven. And then instead of the fathers on the earth after this marriage, instead of the fathers like Adam and all the wicked and so forth that grew up, shall be thy children, righteous children on the earth, whom thou mayest make princes in all the earth. I will make thy name to be remembered in all generations. Therefore shall the people praise thee forever and ever. One day you will be that crowning jewel in God's government, that you will be God's people married to him. And then because you are married to him, he is going to come to the earth. You know, you're going to be married in heaven, but he's going to come to the earth and take over from those wicked people that seem to have such great strength in your day currently. And so that's why you need to rejoice in chapter 47. The princes of the people are gathered together, even the people of the God of Abraham, for the shields of the earth belong to God. He is greatly exalted. So the children of Abraham, those who are of faith, are going to be part of his government. They are going to be set up there in the nation of Israel. God reigneth over the heathen. God sitteth upon the throne of his holiness. And so, and of course, you know, consider their bulwarks. Consider what you'll have in the future. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even unto death. And so that's the last chapter that we finished off, especially that phrase, he will be our guide even unto death. So that phrase is kind of going to be center point to the next few chapters that the psalmists, they want us to focus on, that he has brought us from a point of sorrow and lacking and woe is me, that I'm this poor little guy who can't get a leg up in the world, and I can't you know, all the enemies are persevering over me, and I don't have anything. And you're focused on, and he basically explains that if you focus on the lack and sorrow of nothingness, that is going to be like a deep sea that is going to just suck you down, and that you'll be just completely depressed. You'll be just completely have a bunch of sorrow, and it builds upon itself. And so you need to get out of that. You need to turn that sorrow and pain. Rather than just automatically saying, well, I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy now instead of a sorrowful person, you say, I'm going to take that sorrow and pain that I have and flip it to focus not on my self-pity, but rather in hope in God. And then I'm going to focus, even though I'm still in that pain, still have the same emotions, I'm going to focus it on God and call out unto him, God, why are these heathen raging? Why are these people persevering over me? And they seem to have a great power over me. And then as you consider who God is, and consider that one day I will, even though I know the promises, chapter 44, we have heard with our ears, O God, our fathers have told us what work thou didst in the days, in the times of old, and how thou didst drive them out, you know, and getting Israel and so forth. And then you got that confusion. Thou makest a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and a derision that are round about us. Thou makest a byword among the heathen, a shaking of the head among the people. My confusion is continually before me. I know what you told me is true. I know what they've told me in the past. But what I see today is sometimes I had that struggle. I had that sorrow. What's going on, God? My confusion is continually before me, and the shame of my face hath covered me. For the voice of him that reproacheth and blasphemeth, not only he reproaches me, he blasphemes you. So what's going on, God? By reason of the enemy and the avenger, and all is come upon us. And so he says, arise for our help and redeem us for our mercy's sake. So based upon what we know to be true, we have that prayer and that longing that God arises, you know, that like the apostle said, even so, Lord, come quickly. You know, that's our desire. You know, at the end of Revelation, after we had that conclusion, it's like the Spirit and the bride, they say, come. And it's like, and then at the end, even so quickly, Lord, come. And that's our heart's desire. And so that's what the psalmist is pointing us towards, realizing that we have a future hope, that blessed hope that we're looking towards. And therefore, because we have that, now we've got to model our mind and understand that, yes, we will one day be married to him. He's going to be our refuge. He's going to be on the earth. His government is going to be established. We're going to be part of it, both in marriage and in authority, being married to him, and also because we are the faithful of Abraham. And then in this passage, at the conclusion of all this, now instead of focusing on self and focusing on sorrow and focusing just on struggling to understand God and to get confidence in ourselves, now we are able to proclaim to all the people in the world. So now that we know what's going to be established, now that we know that we as a weak people will one day be the government of God on this earth, like Peter said, the Apostle Peter said, "Know ye not that you're going to be judging?" When they were fighting among themselves and they weren't as faithful as they ought to have been. Know ye not that you will judge angels one day? You're going to have authority to judge angels, so you need to be able to judge amongst yourselves. And so now he's focused on, instead of himself, and realizing that one day, hey, you will be God's authority on this earth, and that God is going to be your guide. Now you're able to proclaim to the whole world, "Hear ye this, all ye people, give ear, all ye inhabitants." See, it started out with self and sorrow and lacking, and to confidence in God, and to realizing His promises will come to pass. And then now it's proclaiming the gospel of God. It's proclaiming to all the people, not just God's people, but to all people to consider God. And so now we're in a position of authority, a position of power, and we're not a position of sorrow and lacking and feeling like our enemies can persevere over us. Because even if they persecute the body, we much rather fear the one who can take the body and soul and toss them into hell together. And so we, as a people, realize that we will live again. And this is kind of what Psalm 49 is going to direct us towards, is the fact that not only will we have this power and authority, but we have a guide even unto death, and then we also have a life that lives beyond those that die. And so now we're going to direct our focus on all the people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. It doesn't matter who you are, this psalm is for you. It's not for just the children of Israel. It's not just for God's people. It's for everybody who's ever existed on the earth. This psalm is for you. He says, both low and high, rich and poor, my mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. And so this is now, these psalms have gotten our mind focused onto being able to speak in wisdom and meditate with our heart in understanding. And this is a far cry from where we started out in Psalm 42 to where we're sorrowing and self-pity, to one of strength and saying, hey, I'm proclaiming something from the Lord for you. I will incline mine ear unto a parable. I will open my dark sayings on a harp. Wherefore shall I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? So remember that it started out in Psalm 42, fearing and sorrowing over the evil people that have power over you. And now it's like, hey, I'm not even going to worry about that fear. That fear is now gone because I have confidence and hope in God. And I don't have a reason to fear in the days of evil. See, today we live in the days of evil. But one day the evil will be wiped away. One day the evil won't be there anymore. And so we don't need to worry about that evil that comes up against us because of the confidence and hope we have in God. It says, I will incline mine ear unto a parable. I will open my dark sayings unto the harp. Now if you consider, this verse is quite interesting because Jesus Christ, when he was on this earth, spoke in parables. And so he spoke in parables to all people that would listen, but those who came afterwards and asked him to reveal this parable unto us, then he would reveal that parable unto them. But those who did not ask, reveal this parable unto us, they just went their way and never understood the parable. And maybe they thought it was just a kind of a cool thing. Well, he taught us about farming. That was cool. He taught us about dirt. That was cool. Break up your dirt. That was cool. But then if somebody says, so what's the spiritual application of this? Then he would tell them spiritual application. So that's kind of the way a lot of a lot of the gospel is presented in the world today is that if you want to learn, it's there for you. But if you don't want to learn, then and your ears are shut to it, then you're never going to learn. You're not going to hear it because it's in parables. It's a hard saying, but if you really want to know, then it's open to you. And yet here he says, "I will incline mine ear unto a parable." I want this. I desire this. You're not going to be able to have an understanding of the gospel. You're not going to have an understanding of salvation from God unless you are willing to incline your ear. You need to be prepared to incline your ear. Otherwise, you're not going to hear anything from God. That's something you have to be intentional about, to incline your ear. If you're just like in passing, well, I just have to be here because parents told me to be here. I just have to be here because it's the cool thing to do in the culture today. It's not the cool thing much anymore, but that's why a lot of people go to the cool church. They go to the fancy church. It's because they want to be a group of people that are doing something cool. Not necessarily, they don't really care about learning from God. They just want to be with a bunch of people that are doing something. And it's to occupy their time. But he shows here that he says, my mouth, he says, you guys need to listen to this. Give ear all ye inhabitants of the world. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. Realize where I'm coming from. The meditation of my heart. I've searched this out. This is not just something that I heard Joe over here say, and I'm just repeating it. This is something that I searched out myself. This is something I really considered and put some meditation into, to consideration. This is not something that I am just repeating for the fun of it. Now, a lot of preachers get up just to repeat something for the fun of it. They repeat somebody's systematic theology. They repeat somebody's thing from a book somewhere. They repeat this, that, and the other thing. And all they're doing is repeating it. They're not really considering it. They're not weighing it out in their mind. They're not saying, well, okay, why does this have to be? Why is that? Why is there evil today? What's going on there? And then they are not meditating God's word to consider those things for themselves. They're just kind of repeating somebody's work that they've done. We all need to make this not just a desire to memorize and think about somebody's theology that they've already set out, but rather make it our own. Consider this in our own heart. Incline our ears to it. My mouth shall speak in wisdom. Now, how oftentimes our mouth is not used to speak in wisdom, we need to speak in wisdom. We need to open our dark sayings upon a harp. Don't be afraid just because you think, well, people out there aren't going to understand what I'm trying to explain. Like, nobody understands how blood is going to redeem our souls from hell and all this stuff. No, even if you don't completely understand it, they're dark sayings. You may not know all the ins and outs, but you need to preach it, and people believe it without necessarily always understanding it right away. Like, for example, I can know how to drive a car without having to really know how to fix a car. Now, is it real nice that I can be able to fix a car? If it breaks, why is this thing not working? The knowledge that I can gain from learning how to fix a car can help that car to run better and to be more smoother. But it does not, having a license, I can have a license to drive even if I don't know how to fix a car. The same way with salvation. I can believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and believe what he says is true, even if I don't know how it's going to all work out. How does blood of an animal cover the sins of the Old Testament believer? How does the blood of Jesus Christ cleanse us from sin? All these different dynamics. Well, we don't necessarily need to know exactly how everything works, but we need to believe and trust that Jesus Christ did it for us. He paid the sins for us. He paid the price for us, and we can believe that we can trust in him, that one day we will be one with him in glory. And then eventually he'll explain all these things to us, but we don't need to know the ins and outs. Some people, that before they drive, I got to learn how tire pressure works. I got to learn how fuel chemistry works. I got to learn how the oil veracity of the engine has to be at a certain level. I got to learn why engines have to be at a certain RPM range and why the transmission has to go on before I'll ever get in a car. That's the way a lot of people are. They're not willing to just believe the Lord because he says, believe in me, They got to know how it all works. and so forth. And they got to have their theories and they got to have their concepts before they actually just take hold on it and believe it. But the thing is that he's saying here, you guys just need to believe it. These are dark sayings, but you just need to believe and trust that this is what the Lord has and that this is true. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline mine ear to a parable. I will open my dark sayings upon a harp. Wherefore should I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? This is kind of basically this chapter is summarizing what he's learned after he focused on the Lord and the last few chapters. And he's proclaiming it to people that he's focused now on. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches. That's basically the root of all, they say the root of all evil is the love of money. It's, not just money itself, but the love of it, desire to have it, desire to live life, to accumulate wealth. That is basically the foundation of the material world. That is basically the foundation of human social life and relationship. I'm going to interact with you so as long as there's some benefit to me. That's capitalism 101. It's like I'll be friendly to you so that I can get something in return. Return for services. That's just a natural way that people live life. And it's not a bad thing to do that. It's just that cannot be where our love is. That's where our desire can be. Because a lot of times iniquity is based upon the fact that I don't have the equal exchange of services, and so I'm going to take and steal from you in order to get an upper hand on you. That is a lot of times what people will attempt to do. That causes iniquity, that causes sin, and so forth, and a lot of that stuff. But here, he's basically, there's two things people trust in this world. They either trust in a person or they'll trust in their own ability, their own wealth. And so this is what this passage is going to talk to us about. He says, watch out for those people that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in multitude of their riches. None of them, because of your wealth and your riches and things you accumulate in this world, none of them can any means redeem his brother. I cannot be that person that you trust in. I cannot be the person who can redeem your soul from hell. I cannot free you from hell. I can't free you from death. I can't free you from those things that really matter. Those things that after everything's all said and done, my wealth is not going to free you from death. My wealth is not going to free you from the afterlife or from the judgment of God or from anything eternal. It's just not going to happen. My own wealth can't redeem my soul, and my wealth can't redeem your soul. I can't redeem my brothers no matter how much I desire to have it. There are people out there that I desire to save their souls from hell, but they don't want to hear it. They don't want to be saved. They don't want it. I couldn't bribe God if I wanted to. Simon the sorcerer tried to bribe God to give him power. You see how that worked out, just for power, and so forth. But here the psalmist is saying, the sons of Korah here, they're saying, they that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means, not their wealth, not anything that they have, redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. And so this is basically, he's saying, hey, you cannot save yourself or your brothers by accumulation of wealth or by any other means. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. So your soul is precious, and it will cease forever. There's going to be a period of time that you're not going to be able to redeem that soul. The redemption of the soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. There's a period of redemption time. A lot of times where they say, like if you go to a pawn store, you got a redemption time or something. You got this amount of time before you can redeem this thing before I'm going to sell it. Once it's sold, it's done. You can't get it back. It belongs to somebody else. If somebody goes and buys, maybe I got a trumpet, or it's like I can't play a trumpet myself, but maybe it was somebody's, like it was precious to me, but I needed some money for a certain amount of time before my paycheck came. I go there to the pawn store and say, hey, I got this trumpet. I'd like you to give me, $50 for, I'll give you $35 because it got this weird scratch on the side or whatever. And then so I was like, okay, I'll take 35 or 40 or whatever. After we're done haggling for something, he'll hold on to it for about a month or 2 months, whatever the period is, and say, okay, if you come back, I'll give you 35 right now. If you come back with 55, then I will give you your trumpet back. And then after a month, I'm going to set this thing in the window, and then if somebody wants to buy it, they can after a month. And then if you want to buy it after that month, it's going to be $105. It's like maybe a period of time, and then it goes on for sale. Somebody can have it for whatever amount that they can redeem. But once somebody buys that thing, no amount of redemption is going to work. I can't go to the guy in the store and say, "Hey, I'm back for my trumpet." 2 years later or something, I'm back for my trumpet. Here's $1,000, or here's $1 million. I say, the guys say, "I'm sorry, I sold that thing 2 months after you brought it here. It's done for." You can go to that guy who's playing it, and then he's not going to give it to you because he likes trumpets or something. But that's kind of the way hell is. That's kind of the way death is. The life is a period of time that you have to redeem something. You can redeem your soul during that time, but there's going to be a time that it's going to stop. There's going to be time of death that your soul the redemption for your soul is going to cease. Now this passage, obviously souls don't stop. Souls continue on whether in heaven or hell, but the redemption is going to cease. And so it says, "He that trusts in their wealth and boasts themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them by any means can redeem his brother or give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever." See, God created all things. There's nothing that that you have that God doesn't already possess. There's nothing you cannot give to God to say, because remember we said in Ezekiel, it says, "All souls are mine, the soul that sinneth, it shall die." And so therefore, the soul, you as a soul have sinned, and therefore he decreed that you die, and then yet you're going to say, "Well, I'm going to be a really good person from now on, and so I can redeem my soul." No, I don't want goodness. I want, he wants your soul. He already made a decree. He wants you to fulfill that decree, and so that's what Jesus Christ fulfilled on our part, was the death of his, the death on the cross for us. That redemption was paid in his blood. He wants the blood is given for an atonement on the altar for our souls. See, what God wants is your blood. That's the redemption price, is your blood, and so forth. And we're studying Leviticus in Sunday morning, and that's basically the blood is given for an atonement on there for your souls. And the animals, blood would cover them until the true redemption comes of Jesus Christ. That's why he was born of a woman, born under blood of man, in order to redeem us. He put upon himself the redemption of our soul. But for the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. There's a period of time that's going to stop the redemption. That he should still live forever and not see corruption. See, in order to redemption here is to redeem your soul from hell and death. And then if you're redeemed from hell and death, then you're going to live forever and not see corruption. That is eternal life. That is the free gift of God for those who trust in Jesus Christ. If you trust in Jesus Christ, he's going to give you that eternal life for free. He redeemed it, he paid for it, and then you get it for free. And so that he should still live forever and not see corruption. And so he's saying, hey, your wealth will not save them from hell and will not give you eternal life. Of course, we know in the New Testament, because Jesus Christ paid for it, it's a free gift. We don't have to try to pay for it by good deeds or by some means. Remember, it says not just wealth, but verse 7 says not by any means redeem his brother. For we ourselves cannot redeem our brother, but Jesus Christ did. For he seeth that wise men die like the fool, and the brutish person perish, and leave their wealth to others. So he gives three different groups of people here. You see, if that wise men die, it doesn't matter if you're a wise person. Likewise, the fool. It doesn't matter if you're a stupid person. And also the brutish person. If you're just a rude, a brash, you don't think of anything. You're just impulsive. You try to get what you want. You're brutish. You're still going to perish. So whether you're smart or you're dumb, or whether you're forceful, you're going to leave your wealth to others. That wealth that you got is not going to do nothing for you after you're dead. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. So, yeah, even though they die, they say, well, at least my name is going to continue on forever. Well, if you're dead and in hell, what's that matter if you got a name of some rock or something, some monument on earth when you're dead and in hell? That doesn't matter. That's pointless. You may have your name continue on forever, but you without your name is nothing. But that's their mentality. Their mentality is, I'm going to get a bunch of wealth, I'm going to get a bunch of power, and then when I die and go on, everybody's going to remember my name. Oh, he was a good fellow, he was a wonderful guy, but that's pointless. Nevertheless, man being in honor, everybody remembers his name, he's gone, and everybody, everybody considers him, and everybody lives after him. The house, he's built himself a powerful house, and everybody surnames themselves after his house, or the Earl of whatever, and the King of this, the King of England, and whatever, and so forth. So they got honor, everybody's named their names after them, they got a nation after them, the table of nations, of course, on the earth, and so everybody's naming themselves after this man. A lot of people in certain cultures also have ancestor worship. They honor their ancestors and so forth by great rituals or great parties or by great monuments. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. So regardless of whether your name is on something, it doesn't matter if you're gone. There's no point to that. It doesn't help you at all. It doesn't help that you're the greatest person on the earth and lose your own soul. If you gain the whole world and lose your own soul, what have you? You have nothing. And so he's pointing out that the thing that people live for, these great, rich, and powerful people live for, is pointless. You live, you die, and that's it. That's kind of their mentality. But at least my house will live on. I'm going to be dead and nothing will exist of me, but at least my name will live on to those who are alive. What folly is that, Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. If you got a dog that dies, you got a person that was, Genghis Khan, ruled over half of the earth, and they both died, they're both in the ground, they're both dead. It makes no difference. It's like the beast that perisheth. Their way is their folly, yet their prosperity approve their sayings. These guys are living foolishly, living for something that amounts to nothing, that is equal to an animal that dies in the ground, and yet everybody that lives after them, they're teaching their posterity, people that live after them, to worship and honor their name of something that is pointless in the end. This has no point to it. This is what the wicked live for, is to honor their name after they're gone, and yet their posterity approve their sayings. It's like one fool telling another fool how to live, and then, oh yes, I'll live that way, and this endless cycle of foolishness is happening on the earth. Like sheep, they are laid in the grave. Oh, everybody's going this way, let me go this way. That's just the way they are. It's like one guy lives, he tries to live for himself and gain wealth and posterity and honor and power and a great kingdom, killing all who would oppose him. And look at that powerful man, look at how much great wealth he has in this world today, and he's dead. And then the next guy comes up and inherits everything that guy obtained in life. Oh, and I'm getting a bigger and more powerful world, and I'm doing all these greater and more powerful things, and then he's dead. And then that's just like sheep to the slaughter. Like sheep, they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them. The upright shall have dominion over them in the morning. So in the morning there. So in other words, death is like the night. But there's going to be a morning to it. He's explaining that, hey, death is like, today you're living and then you die, but then there will be a day after. Like Daniel says, one day that they will rise again, and so forth. They that sleep in the earth, They that sleep, death is like a sleep. You know, when you're in hell, that is like a period of sleep. And then one day you're going to awake from that. That's according to Daniel. If you look in Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of their firmament. They that turn many to righteousness as stars forever and ever. You see, even the psalmist here is telling them that, hey, there's coming a day when you're going to rise again. There's coming a day that there's going to be a morning. You see, all that power and wealth that you've gained without understanding and foolishly and left to somebody else, and you go into the ground and you're like sheep have laid in the grave, and death feeding on you. In the morning, when you arise again, when you come back to life, you will have none of that. You can't take it with you. Your power, your wealth, your position in life that you died goes to another, and you, when you awake, will have nothing. See, there's nothing for you in the morning. And so this is what he's explaining to them. You need to prepare for the morning. You cannot just prepare life on earth and material wealth when you lose it and go into hell and go into death, and then when you awake from that, you're going to have none of that. It's like, for example, when you have a dream, and in your dream, you're some rich person or an adventurer or somebody, and you gather all these jewels and riches, and you're able to invent some great wonderful thing, and you're like, wow, this invention is so powerful. It's like a shoe. Maybe it can melt anything or whatever. You know, you can break into any vault, so nobody can withstand against you. And then when you wake up, all your jewels from that dream are gone. All your inventions from that dream are gone. You have nothing. That's what he's saying. Is that everything in this life materially is going to be burnt up anyway. Remember that in Revelation, it's talking about how that the earth will be melted. You know, the world is going to be gone. And when we're in judgment, when everybody's again at the great white throne, while we're up in there and in judgment, all in the earth will be made new. You know, so all that wealth and power and stuff, and after the judgment, you know, that's all going to be gone. You know, that's according to Hebrews. And Hebrews explaining, of course, is that in the end of the world hath appeared, for then must he have often suffered since the foundation of the world, but now since once in the end of the world hath appeared to put away sin for a sacrifice of themselves, as is appointed to men once to die, but after this to judgment. And so Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and to them that look for him shall appear a second time without sin unto salvation. And that will be the morning, the day of the Lord. The morning of the Lord. You know, the Bible talks about when he appears, it's going to be neither light nor dark, and it's going to be in the morning. It's going to be at that time. You know, of course, when he comes to the earth, regardless of where you are, it's going to be neither light nor dark. It's going to be a new morning, regardless of where the sun is. But that's a different point. So, like sheep are laid to the grave, death shall feed on them, and the upright. The Bible talks about how that God hath made men upright. They were made upright, but they went seeking out many inventions, according to Ecclesiastes. And so we understand that God made them upright, but they went out seeking many inventions, and then they bound themselves to death and so forth. And so they need to be redeemed. But he says here, like sheep are they laid in the grave, the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. Anything that they had from God is no more. They didn't seek it. But God, he says in verse 15, but God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Well, think about that. So these people that are trusting in wealth, material things, and all this stuff are not going to be redeemed. They are not able to save themselves. But he says, God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me, Salah. He wants them to think about this. Think about your position as somebody who is rich and powerful, high and low, regardless of who you are, and ask yourself, why will God receive me, the Christian, the person who trusts in God? According to Psalm 34, verse 2, basically, and then also in the next chapter, it's going to be Psalm 50 and Psalm 51, will be a deeper explanation of why God will receive him rather than just leave him in the grave. But basically, Psalm 34, verse 2 says, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make her boast in the Lord. Remember, these people are making their boast in wealth. Their desire is for wealth. But my desire, my boast, is in the Lord. The humble shall hear thereof and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. See, I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. So he delivered me from all my fears. I looked unto him and was lightened. Their faces were not ashamed. Those who call upon the name of the Lord shall not be ashamed. The poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. He that calleth upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, according to Romans, according to Genesis, according to a bunch of places in the Bible. If you call upon the name of the Lord, make your boast in the Lord. Jesus Christ saved me. God has redeemed me from the grave. God is going to save me in the end. If you put your boast in the Lord, you call upon the name of the Lord, you call upon him for his free gift of salvation because of what Jesus Christ did for you, you shall be saved. Whether you're in the Old Testament, New Testament, it's all the same. Make your boast in the Lord, and you'll be saved. The poor man cried, it doesn't matter about his wealth. And the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamped around about them that fear him. See, the seal of God. He seals you by his Spirit. He is going to make sure that you are not, once you're redeemed, you're sealed. Sealed to the day of redemption. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. Not just the past ones, but the future and everything. The angel of the Lord encamped around about them that fear him and delivered him. You know, this is the neat thing, though, is that in the Old Testament, it was the angel of the Lord that encamped around about. But in the New Testament, it's the Holy Spirit that encamps around about us and dwells us and seals us to the day of redemption. And so, again, one of these days we're going to do a study on the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament in the relationship by the Spirit and so forth, and the redemptions and so forth. But the angel of the Lord encamped around about him, them that fear him, delivered them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man that trusteth in him. Oh, fear the Lord, ye his saints, and there is no want to them that fear him. And so that basically is what he's saying here, explaining here. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. You need to learn how God will receive you. It's not going to be by wealth. It's not going to be about good deeds. It's going to be about putting your boast in the Lord. God made a way to save me, and I'm trusting in that. That is what you're doing. I called upon the name of the Lord, and he saved me out of all my troubles. He's the one who sent the redemption. He's the one who sent the Son to die in my place. He's the one who received back the Son, and he's the one who, if I trust in Jesus Christ for the redemption of my soul, will receive me. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, because you know that God is going to receive you. Don't be afraid when they get rich. Don't be afraid when the fools of the world, those who trust in riches, don't be afraid when they get rich. That's not a problem for us. Because in the morning, they're not going to have any of that stuff. Just like when you had all that stuff in your dream and you woke up, you had none of it. When they go into the grave and wake up, they're going to have none of that. It's going to be burnt up. See, what's neat about this is that everything they possess will go away and cannot take with them. But I heard this one thing is that you can actually send it ahead of you. You can send your wealth ahead of you. Is that if you make your boast in the Lord and you spend your life working for the Lord, those rewards, those efforts, those things that they put into getting wealth and power and glory on the earth, if you put all that time and effort in getting your rewards from God, then that goes ahead of you. Because God gave you talents. He gave you certain things. He gave you spiritual gifts. And if you use them for the Lord, then he says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over few things. I'll make you faithful over many things. Your wealth is your spiritual wealth will go after you. Store up treasures in heaven. According to Luke chapter 12, verse 15 through 21, this is what Jesus Christ, Luke chapter 12, verse 15 through 21. It says, "And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow all my fruits? And he said, This will I do, I will pull down my barns, and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say unto my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, This night thy soul shall be required of thee. Whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards God." So we need to lay up treasures towards God. We need to lay up the things to the Lord rather than ourselves. It says, "For when he laid, be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him." Interesting, it doesn't say it will go up for him, but that it will descend after him. He knows the direction of the foolish will go down into the depths. "He shall go to the generation of his fathers." Now this is, remember in the Old Testament, they're gathered to their fathers. But then when Jesus Christ saved them souls from hell, that he took them out of there, he took captivity captive, he redeemed their souls from hell, and they went with him. They forgot their fathers, if you will. And remember from that psalm, he says, forget thy fathers. Psalm 45, with gladness and rejoicing they shall enter into the king's palace. Instead of thy fathers shall be thy children. Hearken, O daughter, consider and incline thine ear. Forget also thine own people. See, when people die and go to hell, they're gathered to their generations. But then when Jesus Christ redeemed their souls from hell, in the Old Testament, took captivity captive, they forgot their own people and their father's house, because they're now with the Lord. And so now in the New Testament, to be absent from the body is to be present, not with our fathers, because we've forgotten them. We've joined with the Lord. We will be present with the Lord. That is the redemption of the Lord, is not going down into hell, but being going to the Father in heaven. "Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee." So if you live on this earth, and you gather up riches and power and gifts and stuff like that, then people will praise you and glorify your name, and perhaps even worship you as a god. You've seen all this stuff, the God King of Egypt, the God King of this, and the God King of that. They want to act like they are in the stead of God, but then when they die, none of that stuff has gone with them. "For when they dieth, he shall carry nothing away, his glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee." So you better be careful to get caught up in this, because when you get wealth and glory and power on this earth, men are going to praise you. But you better not make your boast in the Lord of that stuff. Now there are Christians, there are people that are faithful to the Lord, make their boast in the Lord, that do have riches and power and so forth, like Abraham and all the kings. Solomon was the richest man on the earth, and had the greatest glory and wisdom and so forth. But his boast was in the Lord, not in those wealth and riches. "And though while he lived, he blessed his soul, men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself." It's a good thing to take care of your family. It's a good thing to do well for yourself. That's not a bad thing. But you need to realize that cannot be your boast for eternal salvation for the morning when you rise again. "He shall go to the generation of his fathers, they shall never see light." They'll never see the light, but you will. See, if you trust in the light, for he is in the light, Jesus Christ is the light and life of men, according to John chapter 1. The light and light of men. Go ahead and look at that real quick. Book of John, John chapter 1, says, you see, they'll never see the light because they're not married to the light. They're not in the light. They have not trusted and boasted in the light. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. Without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. See, that's the way they can see light, is through Jesus Christ. But if they don't have Jesus Christ, they're going to go to the generation of their fathers, and they will never see the light. They'll just have shame and contention and all that. But he says, man that is in honor, he has honor on this earth, and understandeth not how God redeems the soul, understands not how God is going to redeem them in the morning, how that he's going to unite it. Basically, this understanding not is basically chapter 42 all the way over to now is what he wants people to understand. Don't focus and boast in yourself and your sorrow and lack or wealth or whatever, but focus in God and then make your boast in the Lord. Realize that he has redeemed you. One day he will marry you. One day he will return to the earth and be your refuge. One day he will set up his kingdom on this earth. One day you, though being little, will become great. One day you, being poor, making your boast in the Lord, will become part of his government, being the faithful of Abraham. One day you, being poor, will be in honor because you understand. He that understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. It doesn't matter what you have in this earth today. If you do not have Jesus Christ in your life, if you don't understand, make your boast in the Lord, you will perish. And this is what this passage is explaining to us, is that you will perish. And then Psalm, of course, later on in Psalm 50, it says, the mighty God, even the Lord, hath spoken and called the earth from rising of the sun thereof. So this is basically the conclusion of this section. The conclusion of book 2 from 42 all the way to 50 is the conclusion of this section. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. Fire shall devour before him and shall be very tempestuous round about him. That is, people are consumed in his fire. And it says, explains what God wants from somebody. You know, remember Psalm 49 is talking about our guide unto death. And then here in Psalm 50 is talking about that section where it talks about making your boast in the Lord and what you boast in, what you trust in, and what God requires to redeem. So Psalm 50 is basically, what does God require to redeem your soul? And basically he says, I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifice or thy burnt offerings to have been continually before me. I will not take bullock out of thy house, nor the goats out of thy folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. And so he's saying, I'm not going to take sacrifices for the redemption of your soul. Now those are for fellowship, those are for making connection and so forth, but that's he says, and then he explains all that, and then Psalm 51 will be the individual making confession on God. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness, according unto thy mercies. Blot out my transgressions, and so forth. And so you see the progression of this book is going to a direction. And so after Psalm 50, after that final declaration for this section, the focus turns towards individual prayers and individual questions. Have mercy upon me, the person realizing and hearing what the psalmist has said will call upon the name of the Lord and ask for his sins to be blotted out and so forth. And then Psalm 52, why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? And then he continues in there, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Save me, O God. And so these are basically different. You know how you have you have the bulk of your context, and then you have the conclusion of the matter and what they should do, and then you have that question and answer period. So this is kind of what the rest of this section of the book is about. Chapter 52, why boastest thou thyself in mischief? And then if you're a fool, the fool that says in his heart there is no God, that section is for the fools that say, this is not real, this is not true. And then Psalm 54, save me, O God, thy name and thy judge, thy strength. And so it gives different situational prayers and proclamations and so forth. But it's basically focused on what we've just concluded and what we've just figured out. But that's kind of the direction the book is taking a leading to. But you notice here, of course, that the redemption of the soul, according to Psalm 49, is not by riches or any other means, but by making your boast in the Lord. And Psalm 50 gives that kind of deeper explanation. and so forth. But the takeaway from Psalm 49 is don't boast in your riches or wealth or things that you can do now here on this earth, which may be fine for the earth here. But if you want to be, if you want to wake up with the Lord in the morning, you're going to have to trust in something else other than riches. It's the trusting and making your boast in the salvation from Jesus Christ, from God. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessings you give to us, Lord. Thank you for the opportunity to consider your word. Thank you for the wonderful book of Psalms and how that is laid out so brilliantly, and how wonderfully all these Psalms go together, especially in this section, Lord. Lord, I just pray that you will help us to realize and understand that whatever we work for in this world today will, if it's material, will be burnt up and will not count towards us. But if we seek those gold and jewels and precious stones of spiritual efforts and spiritual work and saving souls, and to preaching the gospel, and to giving our material wealth to the propagation of the gospel, that those things will count into in glory and count in the morning, Lord, when we wake up, and those things will go before us. We'll in no wise lose our rewards. I thank you for that, Lord. I just pray that you'll help us understand the importance of trusting and making our boast in you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.